John, this is a demonstration to show you that how the bit switches are going to work on your 4 loops. Each bit loop is controlled by a block bit switch. This switch controls block 1. This is for loop 1, loop 2, loop 3, and loop 4. Currently, the only LED that is brightly lit is the one for loop 1, which means that the loop 1 train is in fact powered in the go mode. For purposes of this demonstration, I wish the LEDs were green instead of red. But anyway, when the LED is on, it means the train is moving in that loop. As the train progresses around loop 1 and comes back into the area behind your parking area, behind your TV set, what will happen is at that point, the first thing it'll do is it'll hit a release trigger for the next train to start as this one came back in. So it'll hit a release trigger, which will start the train on loop 2. Then this loop 1 train will then hit the test trigger, all right, which will set the brake, all right. At that point, the train on loop 2 will set the brake for the next time around. When it comes back in, the first thing it'll do is it'll hit the next release trigger for loop 3. Loop 3 will start, and then it'll test loop 2 and bring loop 2 to a stop. Okay? As loop 3 goes around, what will happen with loop 3 is it'll first go over the set brake for when it returns. When it comes back in, it'll hit the release trigger for loop 4, and then the test trigger for loop 3, stopping loop 3 and commencing loop 4 to operate. As loop 4 goes around, the first thing that loop 4 will do is it'll set the brake for loop 4 when it returns. When it returns, it'll hit the release trigger, which will release loop 1. Then it'll hit the test for brake loop 4 and cause loop 4 to brake. Now at this point, loop 1 has been released. So what it'll do is it'll immediately trip the set brake for when it returns. And when it comes back around, it'll hit the release trigger for loop 2 and set the test for loop 1. And since the set brake was set, it'll stop. This will continue in sequence as long as the brake generator over here is set in the automatic position. I'm going to switch it to the manual, and you'll see when I switch it to the manual, none of the braking will apply. All loops are powered, and you can control your trains manually with your throttle. As soon as you drive them around with your throttle and park them back in the appropriate areas, what will happen is one of them will be set to go in whichever position you happen to have stopped the trains. And at that point, when you turn on the automatic control, only one of them will be powered so that it can move. This was just a brief explanation. I hope it helps you understand the operation. And this is, in fact, your test panel. I've completed the wiring at this point and the testing on it to make sure it operates correctly.